There are loves that heal you, and there are loves that hollow you out so completely that you spend years afterward wondering if the person you used to be before it still exists somewhere, or if that version of you drowned quietly in all the feeling you were never meant to survive. This story lives in the space between those two kinds of love, and it belongs to a woman who had the misfortune of experiencing both, one that destroyed her and one that arrived like a second chance she almost didn't recognize because she had stopped believing second chances were something the universe still had for her. Beatrice was not someone who moved through the world carelessly. She felt things deeply, loved with her entire self, and carried within her a loyalty so fierce and so complete that it never occurred to her to question whether the people she gave it to were worthy of receiving it. That kind of love is both a gift and a vulnerability because it assumes the best of people, and the world is not always interested in rewarding that assumption. The betrayal that broke her did not come from a stranger. It never does when it truly breaks you. It came from two directions at once: the man she had given her heart to, and the sister she had trusted without reservation. Two people who existed at the very center of everything she had built her sense of safety around, and what they did together, the secret they had kept, and the wound they had carved into her life without apology. It was the kind of thing that doesn't just end a relationship. It ends a whole era of who you believed yourself to be. He was no ordinary man. He was a prince of the deep, a merman carrying the cold, beautiful weight of an underwater world that operated by its own ancient rules and its own particular kinds of grief. And he had grief, old grief, the kind that had calcified inside him long before Beatrice ever entered the picture. A past love that had never resolved cleanly, that had left marks on him he carried forward into every new thing he tried to feel. And her sister, knowing this, understanding this, had used it, had positioned herself inside that old wound and made herself indispensable to a heart that was still bleeding from something it had never properly healed. Beatrice had loved him while being compared, without knowing it, to someone she shared blood with. She had given herself fully to someone whose eyes still occasionally drifted toward a memory she had no idea existed. That is a specific kind of invisible cruelty, being loved in second place by someone who never told you there was a first. When she finally learned the truth, the world went quiet in the way it only does when something fundamental has shattered. Not just the relationship, not just the trust, but the entire architecture of what she thought her life meant and who she thought the people in it were. And then she was reborn, not as a metaphor, as something real and complete and irreversible. A second life, carrying the full weight of everything the first one had taught her, the memories intact, the wounds present. But underneath all of it, something new, a clarity that only comes to people who have already died inside something and chosen to come back anyway. The world she returned to was larger than the one she had known before, and in that larger world, something was already moving toward her, something that operated by entirely different rules than the cold, deep ocean world that had taken so much from her. A kitsune, a fox spirit, ancient and layered and carrying a warmth that was nothing like the chill she had learned to associate with love, where the merman had been tidal, pulling her close and then receding, predictable in his unpredictability. This was something steadier, something that saw her completely and didn't look away. The choice in front of her was not simple. It never is when your heart has been educated by pain. Part of her still understood the merman, still knew the shape of what they had been to each. Still carried the complicated tenderness that survives even the worst betrayals when the connection was real enough. Walking away from that completely requires a kind of courage that grief makes very difficult, but staying inside it, allowing his past love for her sister to continue casting its shadow over everything she tried to build, meant choosing a wound over a future. It meant deciding that what had been done to her defined what she deserved going forward, and this new version of her, the one who had already survived the unthinkable, was no longer willing to make that decision. The kitsune offered something she had forgotten was possible: to be someone's first choice, not a replacement, not a reminder of someone else, not a love complicated by old grief and unresolved history, just her. Chosen completely, without reservation, without the ghost of her sister standing somewhere in the background. Her clan's future, it turned out, was tied to this choice in ways that went beyond her own heart. The connection being offered was not just personal, it carried consequences that rippled outward into the world she was responsible for, the people who needed her to be whole enough to lead them forward. This is a story about what you do with a second life when the first one taught you every hard lesson at the highest possible cost. It is about whether love from the past has the right to determine the shape of your future. It is about a woman who finally, after everything, chose herself first and discovered that in doing so, she chose everyone who needed her most.